Have you ever held a key in your hand and felt like you were holding your entire future? That's what this key felt like. It was cold, solid, and heavy with promise. This wasn't just a key to an apartment, it was a key to a new life for me, and for my two beautiful children, Lily and Noah. After my marriage ended, leaving me with a heart shattered into 1,000 pieces and two small souls to protect, this key, this apartment, was my symbol of survival. It was our fresh start. I remember the day I signed the papers. The sun was streaming through the large windows of the empty living room. Lily, who was 6 at the time, was spinning in the middle of the room, her laughter echoing off the bare walls. "We have a castle, Mommy," she'd shouted. Noah, just 4, was more concerned with claiming the biggest bedroom. It was pure, unadulterated joy. This was a 3-bedroom haven in the heart of the city, a place I'd scraped and saved for years to afford. It was my greatest pride. But life, as it often does, had other plans. A week after we moved in, my father came to visit. He stood in that same living room, his hands in his pockets, a frown etched on his face. "It's too big for just the 3 of you," he'd said, his voice a low grumble. "And this neighborhood, so expensive. How will you manage alone?" I should have heard the warning bells. But he was my dad. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike. I saw concern in his eyes, not criticism. Or maybe I just wanted to. A month later, the temporary arrangement began. My father's lease was up on his small condo, and he was having trouble finding a new place. My stepmother, Clara, with her perfectly styled hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, had called me. "Your father is so stressed," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We just need a few weeks, a month at most, to get back on our feet." It would mean the world to him. How could I say no? They were family. So, I moved Lily and Noah into the same room, giving up their personal spaces, and handed my father and Clara the keys to the 2 other bedrooms. It was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks. A month at most. That was 4 years ago. 4 years. In that time, the dynamic in my own home shifted. I was no longer the mother, the homeowner. I became a tenant in my own life. My father and Clara didn't just live with us, they slowly, insidiously, took over. My kitchen was now Clara's domain, her expensive, fragile china replacing my cheerful, mismatched mugs. The living room was my father's throne room, where he held court in his armchair, the remote control permanently glued to his hand. I paid the mortgage. I paid the utilities. I bought the groceries. And I started paying for their little extras, Clara's salon appointments, my father's new golf clubs. When I tried to bring it up, the guilt was laid on so thick I could barely breathe. "After everything I've done for you," my father would say, his voice laced with disappointment. "Is this how you repay your family?" I was drowning. But for my children, I put on a brave face. This was their home, and I would not let them see it become their cage. Little did I know, the locks on that cage were about to be slammed shut, and the key I once held so proudly was about to be used to stab me right in the heart. Narrator, life inside our shared home became a delicate, exhausting dance. I tiptoed around my father's moods and Clara's passive-aggressive comments. "Oh, you're home early," she'd say if I walked in at 6 p.m. Or, "That's an interesting choice for dinner," as she eyed the simple pasta I'd made for my children. My salary, which should have been building a college fund for Lily and Noah, was being siphoned away to support a lifestyle I wasn't even enjoying. The breaking point, the moment the first major crack appeared, was over a piano. Lily, my bright, artistic 10-year-old, had discovered a passion for music. Her school was offering subsidized lessons, and she'd set her heart on it. She'd been practicing on a cardboard keyboard for months. I'd scrimped and saved, foregoing new clothes, skipping lunches, and I'd finally managed to buy a beautiful, second-hand upright piano. It was to be a surprise for her birthday. The day it was delivered was one of the happiest I'd had in years. The delivery men struggled to get it through the door. Lily was at school, and I could barely contain my excitement. I imagined her face, her joy. That's when my father walked in. He didn't see a vessel for his granddaughter's dreams. He saw an object. An inconvenience. "What is this eyesore?" he boomed, his voice cutting through my happy bubble. "It's for Lily," Dad, I said, my voice trembling slightly. For her lessons. She's so talented. Lessons? Piano. He scoffed, walking around it as if it were a piece of garbage. A waste of money. Where do you expect to put it? It's taking up half the room. It's my living room, Dad, I said, the words feeling foreign and dangerous on my tongue. And it's my money. I bought it for her. The air in the room went cold. His face, usually just stern, darkened with a storm I had never seen before. Clara appeared in the doorway, a silent vulture waiting for the carnage. Your money, he sneered, taking a step closer. You think that paycheck of yours is your money? After everything we've done for you? After we took you in when you had nowhere to go? Took me in? The words were a whisper. Dad, this is my house. You moved in with me. That was the trigger. The truth, spoken aloud, was a declaration of war in his eyes. His face turned a frightening shade of red. He pointed a shaking finger first at me, then towards the rooms where my children slept. You and your children. He spat, his voice trembling with a rage so pure it was terrifying. You are all just leeches. Leeches. Sucking me dry after all I've sacrificed. The world stopped. The word hung in the air between us, poisonous and final. Leeches. He'd called my innocent children leeches. The little girl who drew him pictures and the boy who tried so hard to impress his grandfather. My babies. I was speechless. My body went numb. I felt the hot sting of tears, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not now. Clara finally spoke, her voice a syrupy, false peacemaker. Now, dear, don't get so upset. She didn't mean it. But he had. I could see it in his eyes. He meant every single, venomous word. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room. I walked into my bedroom, closed the door, and slid down to the floor. And in the silence, surrounded by the walls of the home I worked so hard for, I finally broke. The sobs racked my body, silent and desperate. But as I sat there on the cold floor, something else began to stir inside me. Something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. It wasn't just hurt. It wasn't just sadness. It was a cold, hard, crystallizing anger. The dance was over. The music had stopped. And it was time to change the tune. Section 3, The Awakening and the First Spark. Word count, 1490. Narrator, that night, after the shouting had died down and the house was blanketed in a tense, heavy silence, I crept into my children's room. Lily was asleep, her face peaceful, unaware that her grandfather had tried to shatter her world. Noah was curled around his favorite teddy bear. Looking at them, something inside me snapped into place. The grief and shock began to recede, and in their wake was a resolve as solid and unyielding as steel. I was not a leech. I was a lioness. And he had just threatened my cubs. The next morning, I went through the motions. I made breakfast, got the kids ready for school, and avoided my father's gaze. But behind my eyes, a plan was beginning to form. It was hazy at first, just a feeling. A need to reclaim what was mine. The first spark of the plan came from an unexpected place, a conversation with my friend Sarah at work. She was complaining about a tenant who refused to pay rent. I finally had to get a lawyer involved, she sighed. Started the formal eviction process. Eviction process. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. My father and Clara, they weren't family guests anymore. They were occupants. Unwanted occupants in my property. For 4 years, they had established residency. In the eyes of the law, they were tenants. And I was their landlord. A dangerous, thrilling thought began to take root. What if I stopped being the pleading daughter? What if I started acting like the landlord they had been taking advantage of? I went home that evening and went straight to my home office. I opened my laptop, my hands trembling not with fear, but with purpose. I began to research tenant rights. I learned about the legal process for removing a family member who refuses to leave. I discovered that because there was no formal lease agreement, they were considered month-to-month tenants. And to terminate that, I needed to give them a notice to quit. A formal, Written, legal notice giving them 30 days to vacate the premises. 30 days. 1 month. The same amount of time they had originally asked for long years ago. A grim smile touched my lips for the first time in what felt like forever. This was it. This was the framework of my revenge. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be violent. It would be quiet, methodical, and utterly, perfectly legal. But I needed evidence. I needed a shield against the coming storm. So, I began to document everything. I started a secret journal. I noted down every dollar I spent on groceries that they ate, every utility bill I paid in full. I recorded the dates and times of his outbursts. I even began to take discreet audio recordings on my phone when I felt a confrontation brewing. It felt sneaky, but I remembered the look on his face when he'd shouted that word, and my resolve hardened. This was no longer about emotion. This was a campaign. And I was preparing for battle. Narrator, the following weeks were a study in controlled chaos. On the surface, our home life was a frozen lake. I played my part perfectly. I was the chastened daughter, a little quieter, a little more withdrawn. I let my father believe his words had put me in my place. But beneath the surface, I was a general. I reached out to lawyers. I chose the sharpest, most no-nonsense one, a woman named Attorney Maria Rossi. The law is on your side, she'd said. But family dynamics are a minefield. Documenting everything is smart. It protects you. So, the documentation continued. I bought a small, discreet voice-activated recorder. I needed to capture the reality of our home life. One evening, I was trying to help Lily with her homework. My father was in his armchair, the television blaring. "Can you turn that down a little, Dad?" I asked politely. "Lily can't concentrate." He didn't even look at me. "If she needs quiet, she can go to her room," he grumbled. "I live here too, you know. Or have you forgotten?" The recorder in my pocket was running. "I haven't forgotten, Dad. But this is her home, too." He muted the TV and turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Don't you use that tone with me. You think you're so high and mighty because you pay the bills? Without me, you wouldn't have a roof over your head." The irony was so thick you could taste it. But I didn't engage. I just looked at him, and then turned back to Lily. "Let's move to my room, sweetie." The recorder had captured it all. His entitlement, his distortion of reality. It was another piece of armor. I also began the financial siege. I opened a new, separate bank account. I rerouted my salary. The next time the mortgage was due, I transferred the exact amount. When the grocery money ran out, I only bought food for myself and the children. I stopped filling up their cars with gas. I cancelled the premium cable package. The outcry was immediate. "What is this?" my father demanded. "The sports package is gone." I had to cut back. "Dad," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "Things are a little tight. You understand, don't you? We all have to make sacrifices." He was speechless. Clara started complaining about the quality of food. "There's nothing to eat," she'd whine. "Oh, the food in the main fridge is for the children and me," I explained sweetly. "But I'm sure you and Dad can manage." I was using their own weapons, guilt, passive aggression, and turning them right back on them. For the first time in 4 years, I felt a sense of control. I was no longer their funding source. I was their problem. And the problem was starting to fight back. The stage was being set. All that was left was to raise the curtain. Narrator, the 30-day mark arrived. I had met with Attorney Rossi. She had drafted the official notice to quit letter. It was a simple, devastating document. It stated they had 30 days to vacate. It was cold. It was legal. It was perfect. I printed 3 copies. Holding that envelope felt more powerful than holding the key to the apartment ever had. This wasn't a promise, this was a verdict. I chose a Saturday morning. The children were at a friend's house. My father was reading the newspaper. Clara was sipping her coffee. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. I walked into the living room. "Dad, Clara," I said, my voice calm and clear. "We need to talk." My father lowered his newspaper, annoyed. Clara looked up, bored. I've given this a lot of thought, I began. And this living situation is no longer working for me, or for my children. The environment has become unhealthy. My father snorted. Here we go again. You're being dramatic. I didn't rise to the bait. I simply held out the envelope. This is a formal, legal notice. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. I suggest you start looking for a new place to live. The silence that followed was absolute. Clara's mouth fell open. My father stared at the envelope as if it were a live snake. He slowly took it, his eyes never leaving mine. He tore it open. He scanned the document, his face turning from confusion to understanding, and finally, to a thunderous, purple rage. Vacate, he roared, crumpling the letter. You're throwing us out. Your own father. I'm not throwing you out, I said, my voice still eerily calm. I'm ending a tenancy that should never have lasted this long. This is my house. You have lived here, rent-free, for 4 years. That ends now. You ungrateful little, he sputtered. After all I've done for you. And this is how you repay me. With a lawyer's letter. This has nothing to do with gratitude, Dad, I replied, my eyes locking with his. This has to do with you calling my children leeches. This has to do with you disrespecting me in my own home. This has to do with you believing you are entitled to a life I worked for. That ends. Today. Clara found her voice, a shrill, panicked sound. You can't do this. We're family. Where will we go? You had 4 years to figure that out, I said, turning to her. The manipulation is over. My father took a menacing step towards me. I'm not going anywhere. I stood my ground. Actually, I can. And I will. If you are not out in 30 days, I will file for a formal eviction with the courts. That will go on your record. The choice is yours. Leave with notice, or be removed by law enforcement. I had played my ultimate card. The threat of legal and financial ruin. He was finally, completely, and utterly speechless. The anger in his eyes was now mixed with something else, a sliver of fear. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing in the ruins of the life they had built on my back. The war was not over, but the first, most decisive battle had been won. Narrator, my father's silence didn't last long. It was replaced by the sound of ringing phones. My phone. First, it was my Aunt Carol. How could you, she cried. Your father is devastated. He says you're throwing him out on the street. After he gave you a home, I took a deep breath. I was prepared. Aunt Carol, I said, my voice steady. He did not give me a home. He moved into my home. For 4 years, I have paid every bill. He called my children leeches. Did he tell you that? There was a pause. Well, I'm sure he didn't mean. He meant it, I interrupted. I have it recorded. Would you like to hear it? Another, longer pause. Recorded. To protect myself from exactly this, I replied. From the lies. The truth is, he has been financially and emotionally abusing me. I am a single mother trying to protect my children. I am not the villain. I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. The narrative was cracking. The next salvo came via text from my father. I cannot believe my own daughter is doing this. You have broken my heart. You have torn this family apart. I hope you're happy. The old me would have dissolved. The new me opened the voice recording app. I found the file from the day of the piano. I pressed play. You and your children, you are all just leeches. Leeches. Sucking me dry. I listened to it all the way through. The guilt evaporated. I did not reply. The most difficult call came from my brother, Mark, overseas. Hey, sis, he said, cautious. I'm hearing some crazy things. I told him everything. I sent him copies of the mortgage statements, the lawyer's letter, and the audio clip. There was a long silence after he listened. Oh my God, he whispered. He actually said that. About Lily and Noah? He did, I said. I have to protect them, Mark. Even from their own grandfather. I get it, he said, his voice filled with shock and anger. I'm so sorry. He lied to all of us. With my brother on my side, the family pressure began to falter. People started to ask my father questions he couldn't answer. Why did you call the children leeches? Why didn't you contribute? The siege from within had begun. Narrator: the days that followed were a masterclass in hostile coexistence. The house was divided into armed camps. They ignored me completely. If I walked in, they walked out. It was uncomfortable, but it was also peaceful. The constant criticism had stopped. I watched them. I saw the classified ads for apartments. I overheard hushed, frantic phone calls. The reality was dawning. The rental market was expensive. Their dream of another rent-free situation was crashing down. With 2 weeks to go, Clara cracked. She cornered me in the hallway. "Dear," she began, her voice sickly sweet. "This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Your father didn't mean what he said. Can't we just go back to the way things were? We'll contribute for groceries." I almost laughed. A little for groceries? After 4 years? "No, Clara," I said, my voice firm. "We can't go back. The notice stands. You have 14 days. The pleasantry vanished. You are a cold, heartless woman. You'll regret this." "I regret many things," I replied. "But this won't be one of them." The final week was a frenzy of packing on their end. Cardboard boxes appeared. I continued my life with my children, shielding them. I explained that Grandpa and Clara were moving to their own place, that it was a happy thing. The day before they were due to leave, my father approached me. He looked older, defeated. "Where is your compassion?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Your mother would be ashamed of you." That was his last, desperate weapon. And for a second, it almost worked. But then I thought of my mother, her fierce love. She would have been ashamed of him. "My mother would have thrown you out herself after what you said to her grandchildren," I said quietly. "The move-out is tomorrow. I expect the keys by 5 p.m. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Narrator: moving day arrived. I took the children to the movies and for pizza, a long, celebratory outing. When we returned, the silence was the first thing I noticed. It was a peaceful one. The door to their rooms stood open. I walked in slowly. The rooms were empty, spotless. The emptiness was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Blank canvases. On the kitchen counter were 2 sets of keys. Lily and Noah ran through the empty rooms, their laughter echoing, truly free. My room is so big," Noah yelled. Lily immediately sat down at her piano and began to play a clumsy, joyful scale. The sound filled the empty space with music. With life. I stood in the center of the living room, in the spot where my father's armchair had been, and I breathed. I breathed in the free, unpolluted air of my own home. I felt the weight of 4 years lift from my shoulders. It was a physical sensation. There was no triumphant shout. Just a deep, profound, and overwhelming sense of peace. It was over. We were free. The next few days were a whirlwind of rediscovery. We painted Lily's room yellow. We turned the second bedroom into a playroom for Noah. We rearranged the living room. We cooked meals in my kitchen without fear. The house was a home. Our home. A week after they left, I received a text from my father. It was an address. A small apartment in a less desirable part of town. That was all. No apology. Just an address. I didn't reply. I deleted the message. Their chapter was closed. Narrator: months have passed. The echoes of their presence have completely faded. Lily's piano playing has improved. Noah's grades are better. And me. I'm rediscovering myself. My financial situation has transformed. The money that was being drained is now building a secure future. College funds. A vacation. A new couch. Every purchase is a celebration. So, what is the moral of this story? It's not that family is unimportant. Family is everything. But the word family is not a free pass for abuse. Being related by blood does not give someone the right to treat you as less than. The lesson is about boundaries. For years, I had none. My revenge was not an act of hatred, it was the ultimate act of setting a boundary. It was me drawing a line and saying, no more. My revenge was self-respect. I also learned that the truth is the most powerful weapon you can possess. When the family storm hit, I fought with facts, with documents, with recorded evidence. The truth is an unassailable fortress. And finally, I learned about the strength of a parent's love. The moment my father attacked my children, he became a threat. And a mother will move heaven and earth to eliminate a threat to her children. That love fueled my courage. My father shouted that we were leeches. But the truth was, he and Clara were the leeches, attached to my dream, sucking the life out of it. My revenge was simply removing them. The apartment is quiet now. But it's a good quiet. It's the quiet of peace. It's the quiet of safety. It's the quiet of a future, finally, being lived. If you are in a situation that feels hopeless, if you are being made to feel like a guest in your own life, remember my story. Remember the power of a single word, no. Remember the power of truth. And remember the fierce, unbreakable love that gives you the strength to fight for the life you deserve.